Alright, a quick continuation on the last video. Like I said, we've gotten to this point, and before we get too finicky on how close our fitting is up top, we need to get rid of some of this extra piece of wood. This extra wood inside here, we're going to carve that away with the chisel, just so we can get a good idea of how well the rest of the tang will fit and slide in here. So it's the same process essentially. Once you have a good idea of how this line is starting to shape, you're just going to follow that line further in. And remember, this line right here has been scored, and for good reason, because that's going to be your barrier. So that's really the time to be gentle with it, because especially on this piece, the grain is going that way. So if that was not scored, it'd be easy as pie just to slide the chisel right through the whole piece. Not as much fun as it sounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off actually using our utility knife, and we're just going to create a little gap for us there. And the idea here is you're just creating a little bit larger gap right in front of that line that you've scored, before you get into the extra pressure of using a chisel. Okay, you can see what I'm talking about. Just a little tiny notch that we're carving out there. And you can see that you can almost do this whole process without the chisel, just by scoring along that line and pulling out these little shavings of wood. But you could actually, from here on, pretty much just use the utility knife to follow this line, because like from here you just have to use short strokes, and you can see how fast you can move that wood out of there. See, in a matter of seconds, it's pretty much almost down to the level we want it. So that's something to keep in mind, but you may also just find the chisel to be easier to use. So that's something to think about as well. So you can practice with both. But once you get a good amount of the wood removed from there, you want to score that line. I'm going to set it down real quick to score it. Okay, and just to show you what I mean by using the chisel, you can use the chisel a little bit easier to mimic the curve you've created on the top line. Again, you're just removing just a little bit of the wood at a time. That's the easiest way of using the chisel. Alright. So then, I mean, you can see how you can use the chisel as well now. The other thing you have to remember is that this front line that you've scored is also going to need some attention, because it has to be, I'll show you using this other piece, you can see it also has to be representative of half of your tang. So that's something you have to pay attention to, and you're just going to do the same process over again. Kind of hard to do. Like I said, I mean, ideally you'd have a piece on either side, but clamped down you can just use your chisel. You would just have this piece clamped so your fingers aren't in the way. Then you would just use the chisel and just create that little notch like we did on this side with the knife, only you're going to do it with the chisel on this side. So just real quickly, I'll try and do my best with the knife here. Well, try it this way. I'm just making an angled cut with my knife to create that notch. see how that turned out. And that's really about as deep as you're going to need it. But you can adjust it later, obviously. And then you just, again, continue on creating this bevel. And again, this is really what you want, and you want these little tiny flakes that are popping up, as opposed to large chunks, because see, you can tear those right off the end of it. Creates this nice clean corner for you that you can clean up really easily, even with just a piece of sandpaper. So once you've got a majority of that wood removed on the inside, you want to keep, again, you're going to be doing this pretty much a lot, pretty much throughout the entire process. You're just going to be lining up the side of the Habaki with the sword blade and see how that'll fit, and make any adjustments accordingly. Something I find easy to do is just look at it from this angle, and you can see, you can kind of analyze what you need to do. You can see, because it hasn't quite sunk all the way down, it needs to be deeper, because you're aiming for it to line up with this line, the end of the top of the spine that you've carved. You want it, so that's not deep enough, so I know that much. And I can also kind of begin to see that the bevel's starting to take on the shape that I want it to, because it's got an even spacing all the way along the side of the blade. But there's a big gap over here, so this has to be recessed and then curved over more. I know my line's there, but that's what you kind of want to look at if you're because you're going to be working. So you really need to be critical in this part of it, analyzing the curve of it, and take your time. Like I said, always remove little pieces of wood, because you will be working from that straight line, whereas I already have my, an idea of what my curve's going to look like. But even as I'm carving, I need to constantly, be checking this, be checking that, and making sure all your pieces line up. Will this front notch fit into this? So just little things like that. Always be checking this with your sword, just to make sure everything matches up, everything lines up. Again, the key points you want to be looking for are that it's deep enough so that it meets the top of the spine, and that this curve is even all the way around your blade. So again, all we're doing is continuing on with this removal of the stock in here. Once you have most of that out of there, again, you're going to compare this with the sword and see what you need to do in terms of, do you need to make it deeper? Do you need to change this line? And once you do that, you're going to have a piece very much like this, which you can clean up with sandpaper or a rasp, because you can see the rasp tends to fit into that shape just a little bit easier than maybe your knife can. So you clean it up that way, and then you're just going to have your two pieces. They're going to be like that, and the next video I will walk you through that end of it. But you can really see how it's starting to take shape, and it's a lot of patience at this point. So be patient when cleaning it up and make sure it's a good fit.